24th of August 2023, Japan initiated the discharge of nuclear sewage into the sea, and the first batch of 7,800 tons of nuclear contaminated water will be discharged within 17 days. 31,200 tons are expected to be discharged in the year of 2023. And currently, 1.3 million tons of nuclear contaminated water containing radioactive substances have been accumulated, and it is increasing by 100 tons per day. It is expected in the future, Japan will continue to discharge nuclear contaminated water into the sea for at least 30 years. The biggest concern is that these nuclear radioactive elements and substances are entering the marine environment. Japan has been making the misleading statement that the problem lies only with tritium elements, and they are not nuclear contaminated sewages but ALPS treated water. So, it's been purified. But many scientists around the world have a consensus that the nuclear contaminated water contains as many as 64 types of nuclear radioactive elements, and more than 70% of them exceed the safety standard. And it is difficult to completely dispose of them by multinuclide removal equipment. Once these radioactive elements are discharged into the ecological system, tritium may not be the most dangerous one. For human beings and marine life, the most dangerous elements are carbon-14 and iodine-129. Half-life of carbon-14 is about 5,370 years, and iodine-129's half-life is even longer, about 15.7 million years. Carbon-14 will accumulate in marine organisms, and the abundance or concentration of carbon-14 aggregations may be 50 times that of tritium. If you think this nuclear sewage discharge affects only the oceans around Japan, China, and Korea, etc., you are wrong. Very wrong. The whole ecosystem will experience this disaster together. As early as 2021, Tsinghua University in China modeled that nuclear sewage will reach Chinese coastal waters in 240 days after the release. And in 1,200 days, it will reach the North American coast and cover almost the entire North Pacific Ocean. Subsequently, the pollutants will spread rapidly along the coast of the Americas to the South Pacific Ocean under the action of the equatorial current. On the other hand, they will be transferred to the Indian Ocean through the northern waters of Australia. It is worth noting that although the pollutants are discharged in the vicinity of Fukushima, the area of high pollutant concentrations will extend eastward along the vicinity of the 35-degree north line over time, spreading from the beginning of the sea area of East Asia to the sea area of North America. At day 2400, the water off the coast of southeastern China are predominantly a lighter pink color, with lower concentrations, while the waters of the western side of North America have been largely covered by a reddish color with higher concentration. Previously, the Japanese government had proposed 5 options regarding disposal of nuclear sewage, including 1. Discharging it into the sea, budget 3.4 million yen. 2. Turning it into water vapor and discharging it into the atmosphere, cost 35 billion yen. 3. Discharging it deep underground, along underground pipes, cost 18 billion yen. 4. Electrolysis treatment, 100 billion yen. And 5. Solidification and burial under the ground, 243 billion yen. With discharging it into the sea option being the least costly. And see what's finally happening now. All other options were rejected, and the cheapest sea discharge option were chosen. And guess what they are using all their money for? Japan's foreign ministry has allocated 70 billion yen for PR expenses. For what? For sealing your mouth, for sealing your media's mouth, so you think this is nothing, that you won't be affected. When we asked the Japanese government, why don't you drink it up yourself since you claim it's all processed and harmless now? The answer we got was because of the large amount of seawater used for dilution. The water contains too much salt. Remember this dilution, we will come back to this. And now let's look at the ugly faces behind these answers. First of all, the contaminated sewage that Japan is discharging right now is not normal nuclear wastewater we heard from nuclear industry. To be more specific, the normal use of water in the nuclear industry is to cool down the nuclear reactors from the outer ring. They don't get into direct contact with the inner core of the reactor. Therefore, the water comes out clear. Whereas the contaminated sewage discharged by Japan right now is the dirty water that came into direct contact with the inside of nuclear reactor core. And how did it get into contact in the first place? It was because of the 2011 Fukushima nuclear plant disaster. Therefore, the water is filled with radioactive elements. It's lethal. Japan replied, only water that has been confirmed of which all nuclides have been purified, except tritium, by ALPS to lower than the regulatory standard will be released into the sea. The tritium that cannot be removed by ALPS will be diluted by seawater to less than 1,500 BP per liter. What all that means. Let's take an example. Would you mind if I pour this couple of piss and shit mix into your bathtub? Definitely no, right? Okay, now I put this into a barrel filled already with the water from your bath. Now, would you mind if I pour this whole barrel into your bath? Author, do you really believe that all other nuclides except tritium has been cleared and the disposed water are now within safety measures? Previously leaked TAPCO's internal documents show that even after treatment through ALPS, concentrations of radioactive elements in more than 70% of the nuclear contaminated sewage still exceeds the discharge limit. So now you know why they are diluting it. Add more water in it, like when you make your smoothies or your Ribena drink. The more water you add, the thinner the taste. But the raw materials you put in, it's still there, right? Dilution doesn't change the amount of concentrations you put in. 100 kilometers from the site of the 2011 Fukushima accident, grouper was caught with cesium 5 times over the limit in their bodies. Strontium-90 is also a radioactive element that cannot be excreted by plants and animals. They will accumulate inside the body and in the end affect us humans along the entire food chain. We all know this from primary school, and now the Japanese government claims that this accumulation won't affect the human race at all. And saying that this is not a problem, how the fuck can we trust all these lies you're telling the public? What about the other methods of treatment? Subsoil injection, hydrogen release, all of which got rejected because they lack internationally established detection methods or lacks pre-treatment and other related technologies. Underground barrier is also said to be an invalid method because the solidified concrete is also radioactive waste and cannot be used or placed on site. Is this true? No. China, the United States, France, Germany all have very mature nuclear waste solidification technology, which can effectively contain radioactive materials and form a glass body that can contain these radioactive materials for more than 1,000 years. Even if the Japanese government thinks that this technology is unstable or inappropriate, Korea's renowned atomic energy expert, Professor Seo Young-jae, has proposed a simpler and easier way to realize it, by digging a reservoir in the uninhabited areas near the Fukushima nuclear power plant to store the contaminated water. According to a preliminary calculation, a reservoir with a capacity of 6.5 million tons could last for 30 to 50 years, with a construction time of 1.5 to 2 years. Let's also take a look at what the International Atomic Energy Agency disclaimed at the beginning of their report. It is a review of safety-related aspects of handling ALPS-treated water at TAPCO's Fukushima nuclear power station. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect those of IAEA member states. Neither the IAEA nor its member states assume any responsibility for consequences which may arise from its use. The use of particular designations of countries or territories does not imply any judgment by the IAEA. The IAEA assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or continuing existence of URLs for external or third-party internet websites referred to in this report, and does not guarantee that any content on such websites will remain accurate or appropriate. In other words, the data are given by the Japanese government. We do not know if it is true, and Professor Seo Kyung-yeon said that it is likely that the Japanese government has required the agency to make some modifications in the final report, and the IAEA cannot afford the consequences of these modifications, and therefore decided to transfer the responsibility to the Japanese government. In fact, South Korea has reported that Japanese officials bribed the IAEA to modify the final report with over 1 million euros, and this has not received a strong response from the Japanese side so far. More about the IAEA report. It only said the water coming out of the ALPS device meets the requirement of disposition. But what kind of water got in there in the first place was not specified. In other words, it is not known to what extent this water purifier has actually played a role and how much nuclear contaminated material it has purified. If the water before it went in there was already clean, then what's the point of this ARPS? Even all that is true, with all the purification they claim to happen, the scariest thing is that 24 out of the 25 filters of their ARPS devices had broken down in 2021, and TAPCO failed to deal with it in time. So how can we trust that these machines will perform as you claimed, without having any breakdown? And if the breakdown happens, you will fix them in time to ensure the safely discharge of nuclear contaminated sewage. The fact is, no one will know. Finally, why don't you drink it up yourself? Because it's too salty? Nonsense. You diluted it with a lot of seawater, so of course it will be having too much salt. And the fact is, they have purified it before to make it like a fresh cup of water. But the Prime Minister back then didn't even drink it. So the people panic, object, criticize. But what they do now, they don't give a shit. The Japanese government continues to do whatever they are doing right now. You think you can just take a bow and say sumimasen and then continue to discharge and contaminating the world like this? And this is what you call communication. This is all bullshit. Now the Pandora's box has been opened. The damaged marine ecosystem will eventually tip the whole world's ecosystem over. Seawater containing the radioactive elements will evaporate and become clouds in the sky. Those radioactive clouds will then become rain and rain into rivers, lakes, cities, into every base of soils and get absorbed by animals and plants. And as we consume vegetable and meat, those radioactive content then get accumulated into us. We will be facing a world with more cancers, more leukemias, more diseases that the current world cannot handle. One day we will have to pay back to the world the things we have caused.